Hey everyone, welcome again to the BATTASS Podcast, the Batman the Animated Series show podcast, where we talk about Batman the Animated Series. My name is Clay McCormick, and with me as always is Sean Murphy. Sean, how you doing?
Hey man, good. I'm really excited that our first guest is actually a working pro in comics.
That's true.
Do you
Yes,
want
we
to?
have a guest. We have a guest with us today. He was kind enough to donate to the Kickstarter for my book Bloody Hell that I ran last year in the tier where we offered a guest spot on the BATTASS episode. And we'd like to introduce everyone to Travis Mercer. How you doing?
Hi, how are you? It's great to be here.
Excellent. Thanks for coming on. And yeah, you yourself are also a comics professional.
Yeah. I just had my first DC book come out. I got a couple of pages in Red Hood and the Outlaw 46, so that was good.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm
Excellent.
officially made it, I guess.
Yeah,
And it's also Batman related too.
Yes,
So,
it is. Yeah, I mean, it was
we've
pretty lucky to get a Bat book right out of the gate, so I'm pretty fortunate.
yeah, so we've got two Batman artists and me. Anyway.
Now
Clay,
I
we're
really
glad
feel like shit.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really nice that Clay is with us. Actually, thank you for joining us, Clay.
No, thanks for having me on. It's just a pleasure to be here, guys. Travis chose the episode House and Garden, and we're the two episodes we're doing today are Avatar and House and Garden. So we'll take a quick break, play the little music bit for Avatar, and then we'll jump right in if it's all right with you guys.
Yep.
Cool. Sounds good.
Avatar, written by Michael Reeves, directed by Kevin Altarian. And this one, a mystic Egyptian scroll donated to the Gotham Museum by Bruce Wayne is stolen by Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul. And Batman and Talia must join forces to prevent the power-mad Ra's from unlocking the scroll's secret of life and death. Their quest takes them to a hidden temple deep beneath the Egyptian desert. There, the Dark Knight is forced into a terrifying battle with an ancient Egyptian sorceress. Travis, are you familiar with the previous Ra's al Ghul episode, The Demon's Head?
Oh yeah, of course.
Good, because I want to talk about that specifically in reference to this one, because Sean and I did not really care for that one in watching it this time.
Yeah.
This one I liked a lot better.
And if you don't agree with us, Travis, then I'm going to tell DC never to hire you
right
again, so
Yeah.
Then I'm really going to be on the blacklist for sure. No, I agree. I mean, I watched that one not too long ago, and I remember it super fondly from when I was younger, because I just love the Batman episodes where he's like globetrotting. Something about those episodes when I was younger, whether it was like the samurai ones or any time where he was outside of Gotham, I just absolutely loved. And then rewatching it wasn't as good. It wasn't as good.
Yeah, I don't know how did you feel about this one compared to Demon's Head, John?
I really wanted to like the Indiana Jones cold opening, and there's so many great sequences and animation moments. Like they really blew through their budget, I think, hiring the best studio for this one.
Mm-hmm.
And my takeaway is always, I just feel so bad for his daughter. Just she constantly is trying to get her these epic daddy issues,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to like this one, Sean, because this is the first time, I think, where Batman has fought some sort of mystical creature.
Yeah.
And I know that's not really your bag.
No, yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, yeah, for those who don't know, like I try to stay away from magic, and superpowers, things that, don't exist in the real world in comics. I don't know how I survived this far, honestly. But yeah, even when I was Batman.
I was a little
Go ahead.
curious about that myself, about what Sean would think towards the end of this episode, because I kind of had
Yeah,
forgotten it. I was like, oh, this should be interesting. This is going to
Because
be
yeah,
some good
it
conversations.
really it really shifts gears because you've got this it opens with this great silent sequence in Egypt, which I
yeah.
thought was really cool,
Hmm.
Yeah.
with a guy that seems to clearly be modeled on Peter Cushing because he looks just like Peter Cushing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and you've got this. I think the story in this one is a lot more interesting regarding the that Raish is kind of the thing they're chasing instead of the guy who's hanging around with Batman the whole time.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And the relationship with Batman and Talia I thought was a lot more interesting. And
Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
I think they took a couple liberties with the fact that Batman apparently loves her now, even though they didn't really cover that in the last one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah. It was. I think it was a better plot for sure. It's just a
yeah,
matter of
Mhm.
taste. Are you okay with
yeah,
Batman fighting ancient mummies or not? You know.
yeah. Well, and it shifts so dramatically at the end because they don't they kind of do this ancient Egypt mythology type stuff, and then when
Mhm.
they literally do it at the end, and it's not like a Scooby-Doo type thing where it turns out,
Yeah.
oh, it's actually not magic, it is just literally an Egyptian god.
Mhm.
It's very it's kind of it's a little distracting, but I really enjoyed it, but it's a
Yeah.
big tonal shift.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I was definitely, I had written in my notes when that shift comes, and just because I know that you do the other podcast, Clay,
Mhm.
I just wrote down The Shining in big letters.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and I was curious if you were thinking the exact same thing, because it has that exact same beat and that exact same feel. Um, that whole sequence with Ra's al Ghul
Yeah,
and the
with
mummy.
kissing the
Yeah,
beautiful woman that turns out to be
yeah.
the disgusting. You know, it's funny, I actually hadn't thought of that until I was reading the trivia for it, because the thing that
Okay.
I thought of, because they mention it offhand that it's very similar to The Shining. I I hadn't thought of it because the thing I was thinking of is in Bloody Hell, the character of the Norse goddess Hel is, half of her face is beautiful and half of her face
Mhm.
is this corpse. And so when they first started to do that, I thought that's what they were going for, and so my mind went immediately to that, and I was like, "Oh god, just everyone, I'm ripping everything off." But then luckily it just turned out to be a complete demon, so I'm in the clear.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Thank goodness.
you can make yourself feel better, because then we can all just refer to Sean and the Lego Batman and his
Oh
gripes
yes,
with there, and then we can always just be like, okay, well, it's not that bad,
yeah.
Oh,
because
I
he
mean,
had
I
a
only
rough
had
day.
to.
I had a fucking meltdown when I saw that movie. Like it
Right.
Yeah.
was.
Well, I only had to rewrite my entire concept thanks to Wonder Woman, so I guess we're both in the same boat. But
Oh, jeez.
It's yeah. Travis, do you do any writing as well, or do you just do art?
Honestly, I don't. I'm a conceptor.
Yeah.
Usually I think I work really well with writers, because I
Yeah.
can do the cool visuals and I can describe plot points and stuff like that and
Right.
tie it in. But in terms of like themes and dialogues and stuff like that, it's just not there yet.
Yeah.
I'd love to do that at some point. It's just too early for me right now.
Yeah.
It's all about the art.
Yeah. I mean, how long? Well, two things. I'm curious how long you've been doing comics, and I'm curious what Batman the Animated Series, if this is a show you were already a fan of, and like how it influenced your work.
So, I'm a little bit older than some people think. I'm 34,
Hmm.
and I didn't start my comic work until about 8 years ago. So I went through college and things like that, but I never went to art school. I
Hmm.
I just drew kind of for fun, and I was actually an elementary school teacher. I was going to school
oh, no
to be
kidding.
that, and then once I hit my student teaching, as horrible as it sounds, it was just like, oh no, I've made a
Sorry.
terrible mistake. this
Wait.
is this is not good.
But when you say I hit my student teaching, I thought you literally hit one of your students.
No, no. I mean, they were sixth graders, so it
They
was
deserved it.
your words, not mine.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things where I had that realization of, man, like this is not for me. And the New 52 had been out, and I had gotten back into comics. Scott Snyder and
Mhm.
everybody who was on fire, and I was like, I kind of want to do this. I think I can. So I took a very realistic point of view. I hired a private art tutor and started doing fine art,
Wow.
and
Oh wow.
while actually doing like my own comic stuff, so I merged that together. I got a lot of great instruction early on from Brett Booth, and we became friends, and
Mhm.
he's kind of helped me along the way my entire career. And yeah, I just kind of took one small job, and then it just kind of built up. I did, just indie stuff. No big publishers, really small publishers.
Yeah.
I did like a Moonstone book that didn't ever come out. That sucked. um,
Yeah.
which I think happens a lot. And then,
Yeah.
I did a startup publisher that ended up falling through, and then that got me into Mad Cave. So I did a series for Mad Cave Publishing, which is a medium-sized publisher,
Mhm.
and then that just took me to DC.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
man. That's great.
Yeah, yeah,
It seems like everyone who's made it has a few stories of them being screwed over in the
yeah,
first 5 years.
yeah.
It's sort
That's
of
what
inevitable.
I think it's just one of those rite of passage that sucks, but I've heard the exact same
Yeah,
thing.
sadly.
Yeah. But in terms of Batman the animated series, like I said, I'm a little bit younger than you, Sean,
Yep.
and I think maybe just a little younger than you too, Clay.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we're still in that same generation.
Mm.
So you guys are kind of the same age as my older brother, and this was our religion.
Right.
This was it. This is what got us into comics and everything too.
Did you watch it Saturday morning or after school?
It was after school. I
Yeah.
didn't catch the Saturday morning thing really until like this third season when they
Yeah.
changed. You remember, like, I think it's this episode too. On TV, the intros were different, right? Because wasn't the marketing like aimed towards Batman and Robin, like towards
They
like kind of the movies, the
we
Schumacher movies?
we actually just did I think it's Bullet for Bullock is the
Mhm.
first one that has the different
That's a good
intro.
one. Yeah.
And yeah, it was they changed it's weird when you watch them in the order that they're presented on Amazon or on DVD,
Mhm.
because they're in order of like production. Whereas
Mhm.
I think if you watch them in order of when they were aired, the ones with the different intro are aired later, like towards the end of
Yeah.
the season. And
Yeah.
so you kind of get it just split up and dispersed among the season that we're in right now. So I think
Mhm.
the first one was Bullet for Bullock. But yeah, it changed to the Adventures of Batman and Robin, and or the New Adventures or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, something like that. And I remember like the beginning, completely took out the fantastic opener, and they just did cuts of like different
Mhm.
episodes like
Yes.
cut
Yeah.
together, and the music was different, and I just remember not liking that at all. And this was even at a point where I didn't mind, Batman Forever. I was young, I was a kid. It was all cool, but I losing that intro bothered me even then.
Mm. Well,
Yeah.
there's certain things that are iconic that it's very
Mhm.
difficult to lose. Like I remember when I went to see Star Trek First Contact, I was
Oh
so despite the fact that it was an amazing movie, I was really annoyed up front because they didn't just use the TNG Star Trek theme,
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
and they used some other theme that they wrote for them, which is what they always do. I mean, the
Right.
TNG theme came from
Yeah.
their first movie and whatnot, but it's like when I finally got to see a Highlander movie in the theater and they
Mhm.
didn't use the friggin' Queen song. I was like, what are we even doing here? Like, what's the point?
I was Clay. Was having a cigar the other day, and I
Mhm.
was by myself, and I had some music on, and that song came on from Queen, and I'm like, man, this song is all over the place.
Oh,
I don't.
it's ridiculous. Yeah.
This is a terrible song. Like, I really like the parts that they use for Highlander, but like the theme of it and the timing is all off. I mean, I'm not a musician, but I think that song is garbage.
Yeah, the middle of it is just all sorts of wacky
Yeah.
weirdness.
Yeah,
But the core at the beginning there is just A plus.
right. Yeah, it's when I listen to it's the dawning of an age of Aquarius, whatever that song is. There's like 90 minutes, 90 seconds of garbage before you get to the good shit, you know?
Yeah.
All these hippies running around, you can see it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of 90 minutes before you get to the good shit, let's talk about
So-
the monsters at the end of this episode. So yeah, I actually both of these episodes we're going to talk about. I really enjoyed them,
Mhm.
but they're a little weirder than usual.
Uh-huh.
And I I well, I guess we kind of already covered the monsters, but the change for me, it was just weird enough that I was kind of going along with it, and the fact that they don't even really talk about what just happened.
Mm.
It's just like, well, yeah, there's monsters now, and then
Yeah,
everybody leaves, and then at the end of the
yeah,
episode, I
yep,
kind of found that
Yeah.
endearing because they
yeah,
didn't go out of their way to try and explain what had happened, and it's just like, no, it's a story
Yeah.
about Egypt, and we're doing this kind of like a mummy movie from the 30s, so there's just going to be supernatural stuff that we don't explain.
Yeah.
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 I
So
think
recently, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Travis.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, just to piggyback on like the not explaining things. I did actually have that moment where I laughed when I thought about it, and it was where Raish uses the snake and throws it at him.
Yes.
I was just thinking like we're not gonna explain that at all, and there's some explaining that needs to happen. For one, where was he keeping the snake?
Yeah.
And what kind of maintenance do you have to give for that kind of a weapon? You've got to feed the snake. You got to
Mhm.
make sure that it's watered and stuff like that. That's a lot of care for your
He's just
Yeah.
for your
he's
weapon.
just he's just constantly like putting rats into his back pocket.
Right.
Nobody really knows why.
Right. I think it comes out of a sheath like a sword. It's just sort of locked in there in a straight line until he pulls it out by the head.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's something
Yeah.
less cruel. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. PETA's all over that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. um, shit. What was I gonna say? I forget. Clay, you go ahead and talk.
Sorry, I interrupted.
That's all right.
The other fun thing about that sequence at the end too is Nichelle Nichols does the voice of the Egyptian god.
Oh, cool.
And,
Oh,
Uhura
Yeah,
from
here we
Star
are
Trek.
back and talking about Star Trek. Good job, Clay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if one of the bits of trivia is that Nichelle Nichols, David Warner, who does Ra's al Ghul's voice, and Brock Peters, who does Lucius Fox, were all in Star Trek 6 together. So that's fun.
Huh.
wow.
I wonder
I
if
did
they
want to
recorded
talk about.
these face to face.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like I think that in the early days that they did, I feel like I've seen Mark Hamill talking about it and saying that
Yep.
they actually got to act with each other in the same room.
Yeah, I've heard that story from Kevin Conroy. I'm curious if they carried through with all of these actors. I mean,
Yeah,
if they're all living in LA, it's probably a little easier.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, so it's now. I honestly, not to jump off on a tangent about stuff we haven't covered yet. I feel like the newer ones, you can feel that that's not what they're doing because all of the performances always feel really kind of stilted to me. But that's neither here nor there. Because I
Yeah.
mean, like the Simpsons guys, they do it over the phone now, which is they essentially do Skype calls to record their vocals for the Simpsons.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, with the pandemic, it makes
Yeah.
makes a lot
Oh
more
yeah.
sense too.
Oh, animation. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a big animation boom in the next year or so. Because I mean, you can do it for the most
That's a
part
good call.
without
Yeah.
having to get massive groups of people together.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
noticed that too. A couple of shows are spending the money on just a brand new episode that's animated. I'm like, okay, so this is the only way they can create
Right.
to dig into their pockets to create decent animation. That's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what I was going to say before.
Oh, sure.
It was when Batman doesn't. No one really acknowledges it when all this crazy magic shit happens and mummies are
Mhm.
real. And I kind of did the same thing in Curse, where I have Jason Blood there, and Batman is learning about this guy who's been in Gotham for 300 years, and he kind of just lets it go.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
has to do with so Clay's been helping me edit my book Plot Holes, and I've had a trouble on the narrative cone, so to speak.
Mhm.
And the best way I can describe it for myself is how much do you really want to know about the details all around the story, or do you want to keep it focused? Like
Right.
the more
Yeah.
focused you keep the plot, the less questions you allow. Like it's almost like pinball. You really want to narrow where that pinball is allowed to bounce and not let the viewers really start thinking like, the fact that mummies are real, doesn't that change Batman forever and the
Right.
world that he's in? Like, what kind of show
Yeah.
is this? And you can touch on those things, but I like it when they sort of just get right back to how it just sort of ignore it, acknowledge that it was weird, and then get back to Gotham and go back to fighting normal crime.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always felt that it's like I totally agree with you, Sean, but it is really weird that Batman does not bat an eye at the fact that he's now fighting an
Yeah.
Egyptian like death god.
Yeah.
Right.
But I guess that's kind of the only way you can handle it because that stuff is sort of incidental.
Mhm.
Because the meat of the story is Batman and Talia tracking down Ra's al Ghul, and the stuff that happens.
Mhm.
It's cool action and it's kind of weird and whatnot, but it's it's the chase which is the meat of the story. So maybe pulling too much attention to the monster stuff kind of takes away from that. Because
Yeah.
I did want to talk about Ra's al Ghul a little bit, because I think his usage in this, not only is the performance great, David Warner is a slam dunk every time, but I think the usage of him and Talia are a lot stronger, in that they are a lot more defined as to kind of what their roles are. And I love that Ra's al Ghul becomes the thing that they're chasing after, and is sort of like an elusive figure instead, even though he's still stepping out of the shadows after having probably had to stay there for like 14 hours waiting for them to show up. But he's more elusive, and Talia is there as a more of a gray zone character, instead of the way she appears in the last one, where she's essentially just a damsel in distress who's crazy in love with Batman all of a sudden.
Mhm. Yeah,
I mean, can you
and
blame her?
that was a huge switch from the first one, the Vertigo one, because I really liked their dynamic in that one. There was kind of that allure, and we didn't have that in this one, but I think that was just because like the relationship had been established by these 3 episodes, if you count the demons one as one full episode. It was almost like that kind of evolution. It was like the cat and mouse, the toying. Now she wants the relationship, and now like they've had their drama, and this is where they're at in their relationship right now. They're familiar, but they have a goal. So it's kind of backgrounded a little bit, like it's in the background, which I kind of liked, because then the story could go forward.
And they give you some little moments with them too, like where
Mhm.
is as well as you can do like a knowing look in animation, which is very hard to do.
Yeah.
They get a couple of those across where you can kind of see their relationship kind of blurring a little bit as to what exactly they're after, and how much they're into each other, which is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I forget the ending? Did they play Lawrence of Arabia type music when Batman walks away into the desert with his
I
bottle of
don't
water?
I don't remember specifically, but most likely yes.
Do you think
I
that he's
loved that.
earned Ubu's respect in that
I
moment
think
or
so.
something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he must
Yeah.
have. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good moment when he throws down the canteen. I love that. And any of the desert scenes, like it's kind of like Clay's Lit by Fire Batman. Like the brown hue
I was going to
is
bring that
just
up. Yes.
fantastic.
Yes, I think in the hierarchy of different colors that they color Batman, firelit Batman is definitely number 1. Desert lit Batman is number
Mhm.
2. And
It's way cool.
it's really neat. And then that weird pink and red Dimetap coloring is like way at the bottom. I really don't like it.
Yeah. What episode was that?
They've done it a few times. I
Okay.
can't remember which ones. I think it was the Riddler one where
The
they have
Riddler
the
one,
virtual
the
reality
VR.
machine.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I was stunned
Yeah.
that you didn't like that. Yeah, I totally called that wrong.
Yeah. I don't like the color.
Eh.
But yeah, unless you guys had anything else you wanted to talk about in the episode itself, what?
I liked
Oh, go ahead.
the use of devices, like when they always kind of come up with something. I remember liking it when I was younger, like the how he gets out of the trap. It was that the secret door finder, and I only just
Oh, right.
remember it. I remember it just because like I remember my dad using a stud finder for the first time, and it was like, oh my gosh, that's what Batman used to find it.
How
Like
long?
it's the
How long
same
did it?
thing.
How long did it take him? Because this is something that everyone who uses stud finder has to do. How long did it take him to
Yeah.
put it on himself and go boop 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 boop?
Yep.
Oh,
And
man.
Yeah.
conveniently, it blows the glass completely outward too.
Yes. Oh,
Like
yes. Yeah.
I noticed that too.
I
Like
did.
that.
I did really like that device though, because yeah,
It was cool. It was cool.
it's a they find more than one use for it. It's not just a we need to have a thing Batman has for a plot thing once. It
Right.
actually has a double usage, so it seems a little bit less gratuitous.
It had a
Yeah.
little bit more of the MacGyver-ish to it. You know what I mean? Because the device was used for something, and then he MacGyvers it for something else.
Yeah. Also, he tears up his pockets
Oh
to put stuff in their ears.
yeah.
I think any other show or movie, Talia ends up ripping her shirt or something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I can tell you what I don't want to draw in this episode is the saggy mummy with her drippy boobs. I suppose that's how you would look if you were that old and coming back to life, but yeah, I'm not sure what I would do with that. I'm surprised how
Only
carefully they animated that.
yeah, only you only that's in your contracts, right? You only draw perky boobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always shrink my boobs down because I don't want to get in trouble and get yelled at for,
Right.
being too male gazy or whatever the
Yeah.
accusation is.
Just make them all saggy. That'll cover you.
That's inclusive, Sean.
Yeah,
Yeah, there
sorry.
you go.
I had a friend who was doing he's a comic book artist. I won't say his name, but he was doing a series of really thick women with like large ankles and just cartoony and strange proportions. Really cool and beautiful. Like you don't see a lot of men like going out and pushing boundaries. Like traditionally in comics, we stick with like classic beauty, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Sure.
So he started putting these things out. He started getting all this hate, like, why we don't need to see your fat women. What are you doing drawing this way? And I always felt really bad for the guy for getting his hand slapped for drawing the wrong kind of women. I don't even know who that triggered because this was before,
Yeah.
Trump, and this is before everyone hated each other. I don't even know which side that was coming from.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's
Who's to
that's
know?
interesting.
Yeah. I had a
'Cause you'd
question
think
too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it was just on the visuals too, and like I love the clothing style in this.
Yeah.
They've got like the Rocketeer pants going, but I
Yes,
actually
yeah.
had to think about it. How are those pants made? Like I know how to draw them, but like how do they flare out like that? Are they just starched? Is there like a like the dresses with the metal lining like
Right.
that has like how do they do that? I guess I'd never thought about it until now.
I have no idea, and I've never understood what they're for.
It's
Yeah.
their riding pants for getting onto a horse. That's where your knees would slide in. Those are riding pants.
Oh, so it
Oh.
gives your knees room to move around inside the pants?
Yeah, I mean, you saw. I remember
Oh.
German Nazis because I've drawn enough that a lot of them rode riding pants. I don't know if it's for when they got on a motorcycle or if it was more comfortable, but I think those are traditionally riding pants, and they are just designed in a way that gives your knees more comfort, I guess.
That makes a
Huh.
lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like, if you were wearing the pants in the windstorm, those side things would just flap around. Like, there's no structure holding them
Okay.
out. It's just the cloth. If that
Gotcha.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not designed specifically for aerodynamics when you are yourself wearing a Rocketeer rocket pack.
In fact, it's got to be the worst thing to wear as the Rocketeer. Like the jacket at least is slick, form-fitting, and offers some kind of protection.
Well, unless the Rocketeer version is actually like a firm thing, and then you've got like wings built into your legs that you can maybe help, make yourself more aerodynamic. But
yeah, yeah, this is one Mythbusters they forgot to test is the Rocketeer's riding pants really necessary
Yeah.
or a way to slow him down?
yeah, it's
Slow
because the
down.
jetpacks kept blowing up and killing people.
That's true. You hope they're at least fireproof, seeing as how the tests went in Rocketeer.
Travis, what would you want to draw in this episode?
Well, I had a couple things written down. Of course, any of the scenes of Batman in the desert, not just because it's easy, but that would
Mhm.
rely, like we talked about, on the colorist. But some of those shots would be really cool, especially if you do like the backlit. So
Yeah.
the front is all in shadow, but then you get those really vibrant brown colors. Is very cool. But I also thought about like just redoing the sequence with the mummy in terms of like the sludge. Instead of just using the sludge, I thought it would be kind of cool if the sludge kind of pooled out on the floor and then kind of materialized with the bones, so they had structure, so they
Oh,
became
cool.
almost like bone zombies, but you could see the sludge inside of them, like they fill them out, kind of like those old toys, when you'd fill things with slime and it
Yeah,
would kind of
yeah.
ooze out. Like that's what I'm kind of thinking.
Those are
Like that would be
Clay's favorite toys. He hated those. He loved those disgusting toys that I hated.
that you could use once.
Yeah. And all the shit turns into like hard plastic, and you can't
Yeah.
ever use them again.
I think in this season, because these haven't been released, all of them released yet. Twice we bring up the T1000 figure or the T800 figure from Terminator,
right.
and you
The
just
toy.
picture like a flesh filling, and then the minute you bend its arm, the thing just dissolves basically.
Dissolves.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, something like
Um,
that would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was also thinking I'd like to draw that final sequence with the monster. You put a lot more thought into it than I did. I just think the monster was cool. And I think I've never drawn I've never done a story that features like Egyptian iconography like that. So I think
Mhm.
getting into some of that stuff would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say the opening. I love the silent opening. I mean, this must have come
Mm,
out right after Stargate, and so there was sort of like ancient Egyptian stuff got hot again in the '90s with
Yeah.
the Mummy and Stargate and stuff like that. And yeah, I've never really no, I take it back. Actually, I did draw Egyptian stuff at least once. I think it was in Chrononauts or American Vampire. They've discovered some giant tomb of a monster.
mm,
Okay, American Vampire, because it was literally a monster thing that was buried.
nice.
Yeah, and like honestly, as a kid, I never really liked Egyptian stuff. I hated learning about it because I'm like, who cares? It's a fucking desert. It's like I don't want to be there. This is boring. I don't care what kind of weight this culture gave us, and the fact that they built these things so well. It's a pile of rocks. Everybody, calm down. However, in hindsight, I do appreciate all that stuff, and I would like to draw an Egyptian things.
I
So
always
that's why I'm
forget
gonna.
that Sean was the cool guy in school.
What do you mean?
Like
Yeah,
he
I
was
don't
he
know
was
if
the
that was
popular
true.
kid, you know what I mean? While all of us were like, "Oh, this is really cool."
The one thing I did want to say that I would change in this, I think, is when they come out after they defeat the monster there, and Ra's al Ghul is all emaciated and old. As it plays, he magically turns back into Ra's al
Yeah.
Ghul
Yeah.
Prime. I would have kept him old and used that also as a motivation for Talia to ditch Batman and save her dad. Because as
Mm.
it stands, he's just tied up, and which is fine. But it's not having him be on the brink of death and her making the choice to ditch Batman so she can bring him to a Lazarus pit or something. I think is a little bit weightier of a choice for her,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's not a
Yeah.
big deal.
No, I think you're right because I even had a note about like that animation was just like when I just kind of put like a question mark in the time because the animation was very strange where it just kind of like was that old style where it was a couple of frames and then he was back to normal. And
Right,
I
right.
just didn't know if it
Oh
was
yeah.
necessary. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that they chose to do that and take out that story element, but what would you Travis, as you probably know, we generally rate these arbitrarily from 1 to 5.
Yeah.
So what would you rate this one?
You know, I really liked it. So I'm gonna probably go high 3, like maybe not quite a 4, but definitely in the high 3s because it's very solid.
Yeah. Yeah, Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna go high 3.
Yeah, I
Not
was on
quite a
the
4 for some
fence.
reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was on the fence. I think I'm probably in the same boat as you guys because I was very much leaning towards a 4 just based on that opening sequence and the stuff with Talia, and as goofy as it is, the stuff at the end. But yeah, there's it's just missing that like little bit extra to put it over the top for me to be a
Yeah.
solid 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's going to do it for Avatar. We'll take a quick break and we'll come back with House and Garden. House and Garden, written by Paul Dini, directed by Boyd Kirkland. And in this one, not only has Poison Ivy been released from Arkham Asylum, but she's also married to her doctor and settled down to help him raise his 2 sons. It would appear that Ivy has gone straight and that her old days as a criminal are over, but wealthy bachelors are being struck down by an unknown toxin, leaving Batman to question Ivy's innocence. Um, Travis, this is the one that you specifically chose.
Yeah.
So why don't you give us a rundown of why you picked this one?
It was just one of those ones that really stuck with me as a kid, mostly because like it was a even as a young kid, I knew that this one was a little bit different in terms of the motivation of Ivy. It
Mm,
felt different. There was a little bit more weight to this one on the emotional spectrum, and it was also very creepy. like the young seedling babies always kind of stuck
Yeah.
with me. It was pretty disturbing. It made you feel uneasy. Even I think as an adult, as a kid, it was very emotionally next level compared to some of the other ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, this one always creeps me out, and the title is so blasé, and I always forget this one goes really dark.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot of questions I have, like how they knew they had to animate these babies that are newborn, make them naked, not give them sexual organs, and then have
Yeah.
them grow up and then get killed immediately. I mean, granted, it's green blood or whatever. It's just like, whoa. I mean, I would have loved to see standards and practices look at this and be like, what are you doing? You know?
Yep.
That's okay. They're plant babies. You can totally kill them.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to it almost feels like the genesis of this one was Paul Dini seeing a Cabbage Patch Kid toy and being like, this is the creepiest shit I've ever seen in my life. Where do these
Yeah.
things even come from and what are they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't remember this episode at all. We're kind of in the pocket of episodes where I don't it must have they must have been airing at a time where I wasn't really watching it as much because I don't remember a lot of these ones from first run. And I was surprised by this one for the same reason, Sean, because the episode the title is really middling.
Yeah.
But it goes really dark after it's strange because it's a fairly normal episode that isn't super interesting until the last 10 minutes or so. So right around the halfway point, it just kind of switches over. And it turns into a really, really affecting episode, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they spend a lot of time. Batman spends a lot of time tracking down a lead that seemingly goes nowhere. You know,
Yeah.
he's looking at Ivy and he's with Gordon. Then he's trying to check up on her later, and he finally is like convinced halfway through, where he and her have this moment where they're like, you know, glad you're better. She's like, thanks, and whatever the hell happens. And then he realizes through Robin's clue that oh, there actually is something going on there. But it's amazing to me. Like as a writer, I don't know if I would risk having him investigate for so much for half the episode and
Yeah.
not have it go anywhere really. I mean, it ends up
Yeah.
being a payoff, but still you're asking readers to like sit there for 15 minutes while he's just dicking around with binoculars, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because there's this weird thread that you get through some of these Batman episodes, and I feel like you get it in Batman Returns as well, where Batman does not assume that anyone can legitimately go straight, and he's always right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he always believes that the bad guy is always behind it, and it always turns out to be the case. But what I like about this one is unlike the Penguin one where the Penguin tries to go straight, that one wasn't really doing it for me. Because he was like he wasn't really committed to the bit, so to speak. This one, I really like it because Ivy's attempt to go straight is legitimate. It's just through the twisted lens of a supervillain.
Yeah.
So she's not like giving up everything she knows in order to try and live a good life. She's trying to shortcut her way into a good life, so then she can kind of like get out of the business. But she's still going to take an evil, for lack of a better term, way to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the crime that she committed, I guess you could say, is kidnapping and then some kind of assault because she extracted his DNA. But it's not like she had a grand plan to like take over Gotham. She really was just doing this to have a family in her own fucked up way, you know?
Yeah. It's
Because
like
even the robberies, don't they suggest that, she was just pretty much funding her own little lab down there and that was it? Like that's what the robberies were for?
yes, yeah. Because it's kind of like that idea that if you're a criminal and you want to get out of the game, well, I need to pull one more job before I get out of the game. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, or you could get out of the game and not do any more crime, not do another crime to try and finance your move into not doing crime. It's kind of counterintuitive, counterproductive. But yeah, I like that they give her, even though she's still the bad guy and still objectively doing the wrong thing, they still attach that element of pathos to her because she is actually trying to just be her own person and get out of everybody's way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one to me is like it's not as good as Heart of Ice, obviously, but it's almost like a Heart of Ice episode that's tuned to Ivy in a
Yeah.
way.
Mhm. Yeah.
I agree.
Like she's a villain, but she's sort of doing it for reasons of family,
Yeah.
and it just makes her more. It's sort of you want to believe in her in a way,
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it affects
definitely.
you just like Heart of Ice. I think just in a different part of the emotional spectrum.
Yeah,
Like you're not as like you don't feel as sorry for her
Yeah.
as you do for Mr. Freeze, but your emotions are hit with just that creepiness of like, ooh.
yeah. And
Right.
what she's setting up is like that's why the ending is so startling and so much horror there is because the episode's called House and Garden. A lot of it is
Mhm.
Batman in a garden, and Ivy seems fine and things are sweet until they're suddenly not, and that sharp reversal is really what makes you go
Mhm.
like, "Whoa, oh my god!" Like, not only is she lying to herself, but she's actually doing some pretty horrific things here.
Mm.
Um, yeah, yeah, pretty
Yeah.
fucked up.
um
A note that I had, just like not a criticism, but just
sure.
something, I guess, if I was writing or talking to a writer, it kind of the surprise that Batman knew nothing about what happened to Ivy, not even that she was released or
Oh
married or
yeah,
anything.
Right. Yeah.
It got me
great point.
thinking, like, does Gotham not have like a BuzzFeed or a TMZ? Because you think that they would be covering these people like nothing, like this week on GNZ, Ivy's released and married.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Batman is so like Gordon is explaining things to Batman that Batman should know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure
Well, I
why they
mean,
decided to go that
he
way.
was in Egypt fighting a mummy god, so I guess he was kind of out of the loop.
Yeah, he
Um
shows
Yeah.
up.
yeah,
He's got a little bit of sand on his cave. He's like, "Sorry, I was out of town. What's going on?
I
Who?
I
Now what?"
it was a 14-hour flight. I haven't slept yet. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's interesting because this is the kind of story that they've done before, but they do the changes. They shift the entryway for Batman into the story, because usually what this is the bad guy gets released from Arkham, and
Mhm.
Batman's on their case from minute one, being like,
Right.
I know you're going to go back to crime. I'm just waiting to be proven right. Whereas,
Right.
yeah, this one, he's, for whatever reason, he's out of the loop to a point where I don't even know how much time has passed.
It has to have been a while if
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you take the kids into consideration too, and like, and just they've got the wedding photos and the house. I assume that they've moved into a new house because the
Mhm.
boys were actually girls, so I assume that they had to be moved to a new neighborhood that nobody knew him or her or anything like that. You know what I mean? So that kind of stuff takes time, I would assume.
Yeah, and apparently Commissioner Gordon must have gotten an invite to the wedding or something,
You must
because
have.
he's talking about her being married as though it's like a colleague from work or so. Oh, you didn't hear that Carol just got married?
Yeah. You know what, Batman? Now that I think about it, you weren't there.
Yeah,
Uh,
and
you know,
Good
neither
job,
was
detective.
Bruce Wayne.
and in the same realm too, I don't know if you guys noticed, but there's that establishing shot that comes where they're walking up to the house and they show the Batmobile, but
Yes.
Gordon's car was not there. So does that mean that they
Yeah.
drove together? like,
Tell me
like
about that. Yeah, tell me about that awkward ride where
right?
he's like, "Wow, this thing's. It's nice of you to finally drive me somewhere, Batman. But can we do this at night? I mean, I feel like we kind of stand out."
Yeah, Batman, I'm sorry. Technically, her house is out of my jurisdiction, so I can't take a company car. If I could get a ride with you, that would be great. And it's
Batman's just.
also,
I think he'd just be giving Gordon like the silent treatment for not getting the invite to the wedding. Be like,
yeah,
"Oh,
he
well,
just
that was
does
really good time, huh?" Like being very passive aggressive.
he does that thing immediately from Batman 89 where he turns the light on that shines into his
Yeah.
face.
He's like, "What the?"
It's like it's on for like 30 minutes for the whole drive. He's like, "God damn it, Batman! Like, I swear I won't look to the left. Just shut that damn thing off."
Yeah, and I also love that shot of the Batmobile parked outside. It's just like the Batmobile parked in like a cul-de-sac of a
Yep.
neighborhood in the middle of the
Yeah.
day. The scene where they're talking to her at the house, I was thinking, I was like, man, this could have looked really goofy, having Batman in the middle of the day just hanging out in someone's living room while Poison Ivy and
Yeah.
Commissioner Gordon like have coffee. But they managed to color it and light it in a way where it doesn't seem out of place for him to be there.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's where like the simplified version, and I think you guys have talked about it before, of like your perfect Batman. This is one of those times where that is really important, because like Nolan's Batman, you couldn't put him in there.
Oh,
You couldn't
God,
put,
yes.
you know what I mean? Like it just doesn't work. But then
Yeah.
you get the full shadows going on
Mhm.
Batman, the backlit from the sun, like it just works because he doesn't look too out of place.
Yeah. Well, this would have worked in a Schumacher movie if Pamela Isley lived in a house that was like with strobe lights and a dance party going on.
Yes, that's true.
Totally have Batman just standing there.
Yeah, but Travis, you bring up a good point about the design of Batman and how the more you complicate his uniform, oddly enough, the less believable it becomes to a certain extent, because then the more the more things that are on him and like technical pieces and whatnot, the more you start thinking about that stuff existing in the world.
Yeah.
And he becomes less of like a shadow, whereas when you've got like the animated series version or the Burton Batman, where he's so heavily built out of shadows and shapes and stuff, it's a lot more believable to have him present in certain spaces.
Yeah.
Because just the image of Christian Bale in the Chris Nolan Batman suit in a living room is just absurd. Like even in Dark Knight, when he shows up at that party to beat up the Joker, it's kind of weird.
It is kind of weird. Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Yeah. And maybe even it goes into comic artists too. Like I'm not sure, but I'm starting to think, like, I think Sean's would work in a situation like that, especially with the specific lighting would be great. Capullo could pull that off, I think, when they have like a little bit more of that Tim and simplistic design. But I can't remember the name. Help me out here. The artist that did Batman Noel.
No, Azzarello.
Yeah,
No,
Azzarello.
sorry, no,
like
Lee Bermejo.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so and he's got that fantastic designed costume, but it's it's very detailed. I couldn't see something like that working in this scenario.
Yeah, I agree.
think if I was going to draw this scene, I'd say, well, maybe they're not meeting in a well lit living room, unless the lights are off and there's a thunderstorm outside.
Right.
Why not put it in the inner gardens underneath? One of those. Yeah, like he's standing up in a tree, kind of hidden, still dramatic. And for that matter, I would just have him meet Gordon there, and Gordon can talk to her while Batman is just watching. Like, why would he need to let her know that he's there as well?
Yeah,
there
playing
is that
his
great
hand
shot
at that point is weird.
Of Batman in the tree with the binoculars. There's that fantastic shot. You could totally see that as a splash page, and the lighting's a little strange, but it's like,
yeah. No, that was him as George McFly.
That's a moment where Batman is choosing to absolutely not be subtle about the fact that he's watching you. Like, I'm gonna stand full figure with my cape blowing in the wind, binoculars staring directly at you, just so you know that I'm watching you.
Yeah, but as an artist though, wouldn't you just choose to make him stand that way because it's cooler looking?
Yeah,
you're more likely to sell the page.
Yeah,
of course. But then you just go to the colorist and you just say, oh, it's actually like Twilight, and it's a really easy fix on that part. But the way that the matte painting in the background is, the way it's painted over with the blue, it's just kind of like, oh, there he is.
Yep. Speaking of design, how did you guys feel about the cactus monster?
I have some thoughts. Like, I really like the neck veins, and like the teeth are very interesting because it stands out. But what the hell is going on with the round hands?
Yeah, it's his
paws.
He kind of paws, I guess, more accurately. Yeah, he kind of looks like it's like they made this Hulk character who's constantly constipated or something.
Yes.
It's a very odd choice.
Well, even in that first opening scene, there's a sequence, and like I was trying to picture it as if I was going to panel it out, and it's where he takes out the guy he robs the guy with the mustache, and there's that scene
Mhm.
where he like raises his arm, but then the guy bends over forward, and I was like, well, what the hell did he do to him? Like, he didn't just slap him. Did he cut him? The sequence is so unclear
Yeah.
of like what he actually does to that guy because he doesn't fall correctly, or like he doesn't react in any way that the hand would actually make sense. So
Yeah.
that was a little jarring.
Yeah, and the striking motion is a little bit strange because it's
Yeah.
such this weird bulbous paw that also has claws on it.
Yeah.
So you're never totally sure exactly what happened to the guy who got hit, whether or not they're dead
Yeah.
now or if they're just knocked out and covered in cactus juice.
Yeah.
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 I mean, they are so distinct though that whenever I see them, I'm like, oh yeah, those the tiny, mouths being stretched to the side with veins.
Mhm.
Like it's a very unique look, and it does stand out. So I think it does its job.
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
have
it
they
does.
not I was just saying how have they not done a action figure set of one of those and Poison Ivy? They've done so many other
Yeah.
characters from that show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like that would be a slam dunk to do a Poison Ivy figure that comes
Yeah.
with the big
yeah.
hulking guy.
Yeah.
They did
Absolutely.
Roxy Rocket, who was
Right.
only in an episode and a half, basically, and they gave
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
the rocket car thing too. Like that's
Yeah.
that's an expensive set to produce. Like I
Yeah.
feel like Poison Ivy gets a lot more airtime, and maybe
Yeah.
something with her would make more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Once I saw
absolutely.
that, I was like, oh, are we getting a Nightwing or a Robin on the motorcycle? Like, kind of like the old
Right.
wind up ones, but like a newer detailed one, because that would be awesome, and it never came.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. I
Yeah,
think
they
she
seem
also wore
to
riding pants, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, she totally did. Yeah, you're right.
Those
Now
are
that I think about
gardening
it.
pants, Sean.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um oh, sorry.
What would you guys draw in this one?
Well, I was going to this is probably something I'd want to draw because I would want to draw I would want to draw the weird creepy plant babies. Those are pretty cool.
Yeah,
Like
I
that whole
had the
sequence in
exact
the
same
lab.
answer.
Yeah. However, also Bat jet ski was pretty awesome.
That's
Oh,
right, we forgot
yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
When he does like the jet ski wheelie up onto the dock and just like jets his way into the monster, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jet skis are pretty easy to draw. I've never drawn one. Have you guys?
I don't think I
Uh-uh.
have, no.
It would just have to be like I guess just like a motorcycle, like the body of it too, where you just have to bend the light correctly to
Yeah.
kind of give it that the curvature, the right curvature, I guess. But at the bottom, you could hide it in the water pretty easily.
Right.
Yeah.
So
You
Yeah.
don't have
you
to
really
draw
only have to draw.
ellipses.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I
Just
think
if you
drawing a good jet
splash
ski, you need to draw good water. I think is probably the only hook
Yeah.
there.
yeah, I was gonna say if you splash enough water, you don't really have to draw much of the machine.
There you go. Yeah. Clay, you're
Yeah,
thinking like a lot of artists right now.
Yeah.
yeah. I was just gonna say I would definitely be the one that pulls the camera in real close towards the water, so Sean would look
Yeah.
through that and be like, "What a dick."
Yeah. Nice half work day. All right, I get
Yeah.
it. You only wanted to work till noon.
You
Yep.
just you do a close up of the hands on the handlebars and write Kawasaki jet ski on the front of it, and then your
Yeah.
job's done.
Yeah. Well, the trick with drawing craft like this is it's so bulbous and round. Like the shape of a jet ski is not anything impressive. Like it's just like a blob that's pointed at one end.
Right, right.
I started to go off on a tangent. I was watching The Matrix the other day, and the Nebuchadnezzar. Do you remember what that ship looks like?
Is that the ship that
Yeah.
he's
That
on,
they're in.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do not
You
remember at
don't.
all.
You're right.
Yeah.
'Cause
It
it's
looks like a
fucking
dog
horrible
bone,
design.
right? Like
It's not
like
even
it's
that. Like it has those glowing discs that can move around the ship completely, but it's basically like a
oh
weird
yeah.
blob shape. Like it's of all the amazing things in that movie. That design of the Never is terrible.
That's
Hmm.
yeah, I guess
um,
I haven't thought about that in a long time, yeah.
Yeah.
and I feel like drawing machines that are blob-like or just more organic shaped, I guess I should say, is like always really tricky. Like if you ever tried to draw the Batman Beyond Batmobile, that thing that looks like two sperm cells attached in the middle. I mean, it's kind of really funky. There's no right or way wrong. It's either the easiest car you're ever going to draw, or for me, it's like, but how does it make? This doesn't make sense. Like, what kind of teardrop shape am I looking at now?
Yeah.
It's almost harder in a way.
I find that organic stuff, the more organic machines, easier to draw from the first angle that you design them at. But the minute you try to spin them, it's like, oh shit, I have no idea how this stuff works at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, some artists you can tell, like, great job on panel 1 where you really drew that spaceship. And in panel 6, you have no idea how that ship actually works, do you?
Yeah.
It's like totally wrong.
I was doing the book I did a few years ago, Redline. I had to design this like mech suit that soldiers wore, and I had designed this helmet that I had specifically wanted to make this sort of like bulky, really back heavy helmet that was sort of impractical because it was like a government design kind of thing. And so I designed this sort of like weird elongated shape helmet thing, and then I realized, oh crap, I don't know how this works from the front. If you draw it from the front, it's really boring and flat looking. And so and 90% of the time I was drawing it was from the front. I was never really drawing side profile shots of this thing. So I kind of backed myself into a corner design wise.
Yeah. Honestly, like the Rocketeer helmet, it really should be drawn from the side in order to make sense. If you draw the Rocketeer looking directly at the camera, it sucks. You should always tilt his head. And I have a character like that in Plot Holes where I always set the camera next to him sideways because his helmet looks so great from the side. It looks like shit from the front. Just gonna hide that, you know. Or Wolverine's weird headpiece things. Like it works great from the front, but from the side, it's like what?
Sides. I have no idea how to bend this. What?
Yeah. And his boots. I've always his boots from any angle other than the front. It's like you're on your own. Yeah. Travis, what would you draw for this one?
Just pretty much to piggyback off of what you said, the creepy babies has to be the thing that I would do, especially when they kind of have that angry look and it looks like they're trying to get out of their pods. And the vines are kind of going around, because you could even do that around her too. You could put her as the focal point and then have the babies kind of surrounding her. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. I also was thinking, I mean, I know it's a cartoon for kids, but if I were to draw those babies, I would draw them a lot more weird looking, because I was that first moment where that you hear the voice coming out of that like blob of plant matter. I was like, oh man, what sort of weird David Cronenberg thing is coming out of this? But then it was just a normal looking child. So I think I'd probably go a little bit more weird and monstrous with it.
Yeah.
Right. But if the child was born weird looking, you wouldn't feel empathy as it started to transform. Like seeing it as a seemingly normal baby and then seeing it, it makes it even more horrible, I think.
Have you seen newborn babies? They're disgusting. You don't have empathy. You don't have empathy with a brand newborn baby.
Wow.
They're disgusting. They're monsters.
Oh man.
Clay's gonna get some tweets.
I know. Travis, do you have kids, Travis?
I don't.
You don't? Neither do I. I guess this is why all of us are okay with
this.
Yeah,
we're okay with this. This is funny to us. Yeah.
What would you draw, Sean?
I was going to answer. I had a boring answer, which was I actually like drawing plants and shrubbery. So I was going to say like Batman and the greenhouse would be cool. But I think I want to do a 1-page silent page of him and Gordon awkwardly driving from the police station to the suburbs. At one point, Gordon tries to turn on the radio, and Batman turns it off. Right, it doesn't even say anything.
Yes,
the worst road trip.
Are we there yet?
Yeah, I bet there was probably a lot of awkward pauses in that drive.
There was one thing that I noticed that this episode did that didn't have anything to do with Poison Ivy, but that they'd never done before in terms of what I thought of as with Robin. Aside from Robin's Reckoning, he's pretty much just a kid. Even though he's supposed to be in college, he still kind of acts like that 15, 14-year-old. But this was the first time they ever depicted him as being interested in girls, and is suggested that he's kind of a ladies' man. When he's in the dorm room, that's never been played up at all. And I thought that was interesting because that's kind of like the evolution of his Nightwing character. So it was just kind of interesting to see that in particular.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that she was going to be like, I know why you really asked me here. And it's like, no, legitimately to study. I have no ulterior motive.
A little bit of the Burt Ward coming out.
Exactly. Yeah.
What else would I be?
Why does this always happen when I hang out with girls one-on-one? They always come on to me. Jesus.
Yeah, I know. I brought all these books for a reason.
I've got finals. I made that very clear.
Yeah.
Um,
This is, I think I read somewhere that when they set up that scene to show that Batman's bullshit is getting in the way of Dick at this
Sure.
point.
sure.
Like every other
Yeah.
time we've seen him,
Literally.
he's happily been, yeah.
Yeah.
He's, Dick has always been on board with Batman's adventures, but this is the first time where he's like, really? Right now? Oh, I'm kind of trying to get laid, dude. And I think they set it up so that they could have more of a falling out later on.
Yeah.
But I think this is
Bat
where that
cock
falling
blunt.
out begins. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad plot.
They also background stuff they in Poison Ivy's scrapbook there. She's got a bunch of pictures
the
of this
Harley,
Harley. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
they're,
yeah.
That was
they're
a nice
continuing
touch.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're continuing that stuff, which is fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
got to be Dini's influence because I'm guessing
definitely,
he always
yeah.
pushes that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah,
I
that's
really
great.
liked that too. That small little moment. That was cool to see those pictures.
Yeah.
Sean, what would you rate this episode?
I'm gonna go with. The second half I think is a 4, but I'm gonna go 4 on the whole thing, like
Yeah.
a low 4.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think it's the back half is strong enough, despite the kind of, I don't know. That monster is just so strange, and like the scene where he's in the back of the car and he pops up is really weird. Like, how did Bruce not realize there was a giant
Right.
cactus man in the back seat?
Another issue of the space in the back seat. How big are
Yeah.
these cars? Like,
Yeah.
But that stuff aside, I think it's a strong enough story that I'm going to go with a 4. Yeah. What about you, Travis?
yeah, I would also do 4. Simply, you guys have brought it up too. Like, this is one of those ones that I might show somebody.
Sure. Yeah.
Who
yeah.
who hasn't watched the show enough, or who likes Batman, maybe knows the characters, like maybe they know Poison Ivy. I think I would show them this to kind of tug at that little bit more of the weird emotional part of it, to
Yeah.
kind of get them interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that's a good point. Yeah, this is definitely one that I could show to my wife who used to have no interest in Batman, but I forced her to
Yeah.
watch enough of these where she starts to appreciate them at least a little bit.
The
And
next step
episodes
is
like this are always key to
Yeah.
hook her in.
Same.
Yeah, the next step is to convince her to read your Batman comics.
Yeah. Only I could do that. I kind of like
Uh,
having a wife that doesn't give a shit about what I do. There's healthy
That's fair.
separation there.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's going to do it for Avatar and House and Garden. Thank you guys so much for joining us, listening. Thank you, Travis, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks,
That
Travis.
it was a pleasure to be here. Thanks, guys, for having me.
And thank you
if we
so
ever
much
see
for
you at a show or whatever, we could be cool to. Well, if conventions ever begin again, if we ever see
Yeah.
you, we
right.
could all get a beer together or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely.
And thank you very much for donating to my Kickstarter. Much appreciated.
Of course.
And we will be back next time with the Terrible Trio and Harlequinade. Harlequinade? Yeah, sure. It sounds delicious, whatever it is. Okay, thanks guys. Talk to you soon.
Let's have a good time.